Well, hello. The next thing I wanted to show you is how to give your trumpet a bath. I've had a couple of students ask me about that. How do I take care of this thing? How do I keep it clean? Well, there never seems to be enough time in class to go through all of that. So they said, why don't you make an instructional video? Here it is. I hope it helps you out. So the first thing that we're going to do is disassemble the trumpet, and we're going to take all the parts and pieces off of it, and we'll set them aside. I like to just start by pulling all the valves. You'll notice that the valves are numbered. Generally speaking, here this is valve number 1. That's the valve closest to the mouthpiece. You'll find this one is stamped number 2 and number 3. So we'll pull those out. The first valve slide comes off as well, the tuning slide. And so we're going to pull all of these slides out and have that trumpet ready to go to the cleaner. So here's the retaining clip right on this third valve. Some trumpets have these, some of them do not. This valve slide is intended to be able to slide very freely inside the tubing as you're tuning up the lower notes, especially the D. Any note below the staff that you're using the third valve on, you'll want to detune that, and so that slides. It should slide very easily. There's your retaining clip. We'll pull the lower caps off of the valve cylinders, and then of course the main tuning slide has to come out as well. So we have the trumpet then all disassembled, so it's looking like this. Next thing we're going to do is run some warm water. You can do this inside of your kitchen sink with some gentle dish detergent using that. You're going to also want to have some brushes. There's a kit that's made specifically for this. I know Yamaha sells it. All of the main brands will sell a cleaning kit. You'll get some slide grease with that. You'll get oil for the valves. You'll get brushes for the mouthpiece. This one's for the mouthpiece. This one is for the cylinders. This one is used for the lead pipe. So I'm simply going to use some warm water here. First thing I like to do is take the valve. You can swish it in your dishwater if you have some dishwater, but I'm just going to take some soft detergent, wipe it on here, scrub the outside of the valve off. I'll take my mouthpiece brush. I can run it right through the holes of the valve, keeping those nice and clean. You'll find that there's a lot of buildup inside of those holes over time, especially if you've never cleaned your trumpet. You'll look inside those holes and it can be pretty nasty if it's never cleaned. And I'm going to rinse the bottom off. Notice how I'm not getting the top of the valve wet. You don't need to, nor does it need to be washed off. There's nothing, there shouldn't be anything that gets up in the top portion of the valve. I set it aside. I get my next one. Wash the outside of the valve. Notice I'm not using anything abrasive on the valve. You should not be using sandpaper or any kind of abrasive materials on there. I would prefer not even to use a Scotch-Brite pad. They can be somewhat abrasive. You generally don't need to. With warm water and some nice soft detergent, you can keep that instrument very clean and the valves will function very well. So my valves are all now washed off. It takes a lot of the oil and any buildup of grime off of those valves. The next thing I'm going to do is the body of the trumpet. I'm going to start with the inside of the valve cylinders. I'm going to take my brush and get some nice gentle detergent on that brush. Run some warm water down through each of the cylinders of the trumpet. You want to get some warm water in there. If your sink is deep enough that you can submerse this trumpet all disassembled could be submersed in warm water with some nice, some gentle detergent in the water. So now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to run it through each of the cylinders in the trumpet. I'm going to give it a twist as I'm running it through, help scrub the inside of that off. If you don't have this brush, you can use like a toothbrush in a pinch, but it doesn't get around the outside of this valve very well. I would really encourage you to go out and buy an actual set to wash this with. You're going to do all 3 valves. All 3 cylinders, that is. And I'm going to scrub those out very well. we go. Rinse my brush off, set it aside, rinse the soap out of the trumpet. Now what you can't see is all of the debris that actually came out of the bottom of those valves. Should have had the camera set up so you could see that. This trumpet I keep in pretty good shape as I use, this is my own trumpet. This is one I use in lessons, and it still will get debris out of the bottom of that trumpet. Next thing I'm going to do is the lead pipes. I'm going to put some more of that soft soap on the brush that's designed to do all of these pipes. I'm going to run this right down through what's called the lead pipe on the trumpet. And so as I run that down through there, I can scrub it back and forth. Really guiding this. It's made out of a spring, so it's very flexible. But I want to be able to run it all the way down through that lead pipe. You can see it's starting to poke out the end. Right. So I run that up, run that through. I can run it into the other pipes in the trumpet. Now I want to be careful when I get to the end of these. All of the other tubings have little bends on them. I don't want to force it around that bend, and I don't want to do any damage to the inside of that tube. So I'm careful as I get to the end of those. Here you can see the brush running right through the valves. I'll see if I can get that angled right. You can see it moving through those valves. I guess you can't see it very well, but it moves straight through. I'm going to clean out all of the tubes. Get them nice and clean, scrub them out. Adding more soap as necessary. These will build up quite a bit of debris in them, and you want to keep all of that clean. If you have a brand new trumpet, you'll want to keep your trumpet, you'll want to give it a bath about, every couple of weeks when it's brand new, about every month to 2 months after it's been broken. When all of that is done, you can rinse it all off. Like just shake the trumpet, being careful not to bang it into anything. Shake it in each of the different directions with all the tubing. You want to get as much of that water out of there as you can, and then we'll set that aside. Next, we have all of the different slides on the trumpet. Same thing. This I wouldn't drop all the way in because any of the water keys, the water valves, more commonly known as spit valves, anytime that you have those on a trumpet, they're made out of cork. I wouldn't want to submerge that in water, but you can wash this tubing off. Any of the tubing where it slides inside of the trumpet, you want to really scrub that off. You're going to get a buildup of first grease, because you have to put grease on these to keep them nice and slick, moving on the trumpet, keep them from freezing up. But that grease does have a tendency to get hard over time, and so you want to keep those nice and clean. So you can just scrub them off. If you wanted to use a rag, you could use a rag, anything non-abrasive. Again, you don't want to use any abrasive materials on this. All of the slides. Even this little guy for the second valve, right? You want to get that all cleaned off, keep that free. Very slick. I'm going to do my mouthpiece as well. I can take my mouthpiece, wash the inside of it, wash the outside, can wash off the shank. And I can take my mouthpiece brush. The reason why the mouthpiece brush is tapered is because the inside of the mouthpiece is also tapered. So you can run that right up through the mouthpiece. You can see that it moves all the way through the mouthpiece. And again, like the valve cylinders, I'll just twist that brush as I'm running it through, and it will help to keep the inside of that mouthpiece nice and clean. You won't have a buildup of gunk in there. And certainly it likes to build up all kinds of debris. I'll also at this time mention that it's always a good idea. A lot of times kids in school, they come right from lunch and they move right into their band time out of lunch or sometime around lunch. Remember, it's always a good practice to rinse your mouth before playing your instrument. It's even better yet to brush your teeth before playing an instrument because, well, gunk can grow inside of an instrument, and oh boy, does gunk ever love to eat on sugars and stuff. So, again, You end up with debris coming out of your tubing. The longer it has been since you have cleaned your instrument, the more the debris you're going to get out of that. And so again, you'll just see that I'm running this brush right inside of the instrument. This tubing, this is that third valve slide. It is also one that has a water key on it. And so I wouldn't want to just set that right down and leave it submersed in water. Instead, I hold it up and I rinse it out. A little bit of water won't hurt it. It's made for that. But I don't submerse mine into the water. Brush out all the inside of the tubing. And you'll have yourself a nice clean trumpet. The amazing thing is how well the valves work. I love doing this with students in the room because as I reassemble the trumpet and I hand them the trumpet, the before and after on the valves, how well the valves work is always amazing to the students. They pick it up and say, wow, can't believe how different that is. So we'll take a rag, a dish towel, paper towels. We'll wipe this off. If you have an instrument that is an expensive instrument, high-end instrument, you won't want to use maybe a microcloth on this, something very soft for it. The instruments come many times as you buy them, as you purchase them, they'll come with a nice soft polishing cloth. You can use that then after you wipe it off with a very soft, gentle cloth. I wouldn't use paper towels on an expensive instrument. Mine is not a highly expensive instrument, although it has functioned very well for me for many years. So I'm just going to dry off all the parts. And I'm sorry if any of you out there, you're purists and you're seeing me do this and you're cringing because I'm using paper towels on my trumpet. I'm very sorry. It happens to be very handy here in my workroom. Inside of the lower caps on the cylinders, you can wipe those out. You will always get debris that collects in the bottom of these. It's very normal. You're putting a lot of oil into these valves and they are used a lot. And so this is where all of that will land, all of that extra little debris. So I always take the time to wipe those out. They will collect quite a bit no matter what you do. And then you're about ready to reassemble your instrument. So there we have, all of that is wiped out. Now, what we'll do, I want to take the time and wipe off my instrument as well. Again, if this bothers you, don't look. But I'm just going to gently run a paper towel over that, just get most of the water off of it. It would be good to allow your instrument to dry, to air dry completely before putting it together. I don't always have that time when I'm working with the students and have the opportunity to let it sit that long. Many times we have to get it cleaned up and right back in their hands. I do like to take a minute as I'm doing this portion of the cleanup, and on the bottom of the cylinders are the threads. I like to really wipe those off well. You'll get a lot of debris that collects in those as well. The more debris that's in the threads at the bottom of that cylinder, the more likely the cap is going to stick on there. So there we have it. So now the last thing that we have to do is to reassemble everything. In order to do that, you'll need some slide grease. The slide grease is really important. That's what keeps all of the slides from freezing in place or getting stuck inside the instrument. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the slide grease and I'll run a couple of streaks on there. Many times as I'm showing the students this live, I can say, man, you don't even hardly see that on there. There's a little streak there, but you want enough to put that on, and then you want to rub it right into that brass and make it so it's nice and smooth. You don't need gobs on there. You just want a light film of grease on that slide. Once you do that, then you can put that right back into the trumpet, right where it belongs, right where it came off. You'll notice that that slides in. It should have a little resistance on the tuning slide, but not a lot. It shouldn't fall out. It shouldn't be so loose that it falls out, but it shouldn't be so stiff that you can't move it. Once you do that, then you would do all of the other slides. Same thing, rubbing that grease right into the brass of the slide. I'm just going to set these aside. I'll lube them up. Once they're lubed up, I'm going to wipe my fingers off, then I can reassemble all of them. This valve is the one that is one of the slickest because we need to be able to move this valve to tune as well. So it should move relatively easy. Along with this third valve, it also should slide very easily. This one, in fact, might fall out if you didn't have your finger ring in place and a retaining clip. So I like to have my retaining clip on there. Some trumpets don't have a retaining clip. I've had students pick up their trumpets when this is nice and slick so it'll move easily. They'll pick up their trumpet and the tuning slide clip is not on the instrument. They don't have one, and so they pick it up and that third valve slide falls right out. Most younger students, however, will find that theirs doesn't have a retaining clip because it doesn't really need one. They have a third valve that tuning slide that doesn't even move. Of course, it should be super slick. Actually, I like to take, once I've got that grease on there, I like to even take a little dab of valve oil and drop just a drop on. You don't need a lot. I'll wipe off the excess, make sure that you don't have excess on there. But that then moves super easy so I can tune those lower notes up with no problem. No resistance on that. Feels like a slide on a slide trombone. Okay, so last thing is the lower caps and the valves. So I'm going to take just a little bit, I like to take a little bit of grease. This isn't something that I've seen a lot of people do, but I like to just take a little bit of grease and put it right inside of the cap on those threads. Keeps them from sticking, especially on my school instruments where some of my students do not take care of their instruments well. These lower caps might not come off in a year's time. So just a real little bit of grease. You can't even see it inside of that cap at all. Right? There's no gobs. There's just a super light film. One of my supervisors in the Air Force insisted that every month we go around to every electrical box that we have with threaded caps and grease those threaded caps. Oh my gosh. Drove me nuts. But we never had a conduit junction box with threaded lids that didn't come open when we needed to open them. So worked out really well. Anyhow, moving right along. Here's how I like to oil the valves. So as you're putting your valves back in, you look for the number. There's my number 3. I don't know if you can see that well enough, but there's a number 3 stamped right into the side of this valve. I'm going to drop it down in my third valve cylinder. Keep the top of the chrome piston exposed. It only takes 3 or 4 drops of oil, just a real light film of oil on that. And I like to spin it as I'm dropping it into the cylinder. That way it spreads all the oil around the piston. And then when it comes down to the bottom and you spin it, it's going to click into place. Listen. Once it clicks into place, then the valve won't turn clockwise or counterclockwise. You know it's in place then. Some trumpets will have the retaining clip, and this is that little retaining clip right here, and that little clip clips into a notch inside the cylinder. This is my first valve, by the way. So as I clip that in, some valves will allow it to click into position in one position, and then just 180 degrees it'll click again into position. Those are kind of confusing for kids because if it clicks into the wrong spot, then air won't go through the instrument. But most trumpets will only clip in to one position, and then you have to go 360 degrees around in order to get it to click into position again. So now my second valve, drop the oil on it as well, spread it around inside that cylinder, clicks into place, carefully start the threads so that they go in nice and easy, and I just snug that. You don't tighten any of these things down. They're all just snugged, and then the valves work like butter. And that's the way that it's supposed to work. If the valves are sticking, a lot of times we just try to add more oil to it. Students will just dump more oil on. That doesn't always help. They put more oil on and it's still sticking down. They're like, Mr. Peters, I say, when's the last time you gave your trumpet a bath? A bath? And so you just saw my trumpet get its bath. So I hope that this has been helpful for you and informative. We have a nice clean trumpet, And oh, nothing like playing on a trumpet when the valves are working like they should. Hope that that helps you as you work on the trumpet, keeping it nice and clean, caring for that instrument. You have a great day, and I hope this is helpful. Bye.